Kambakwe.com, Kambakwe.com, anogaya mari.
Kambakwe uyo anotara mari, anogaya mari. Garai mamunzwa, pane nyaya pano, zvamunoda kunzwa zvinotaurwa pano.
Right. 16 August 2022, and today I'm joined by my usual guest from Botswana, Dr. Fedias Muteri. How are you, doctor?
I'm very well, Kambakwe. Good evening to you. Before I even go anywhere, I want to say my apologies. I couldn't meet you this weekend, yet I was right behind your yard, huh? In Midrand.
Yes. Don't worry, doctor. You'll see me again very soon.
Okay. All right.
Right. Let's go very, very quickly through the topic that we want to discuss today. Our opposition leader here in Zimbabwe, the main opposition leader, Nelson Chamisa, he had a torrid time this weekend. Very small crowd burst from all over the country. And I could not tell what to make of what they were trying to do in Masvingo. Do you understand what was going on there?
Well, thank you for that, Kambakwe. But as my opening, I want to call you out, Kambakwe, on your firstly your headlines. For instance, the one we are discussing, Chamisa Masvingo rally flops. I mean, as a journalist that I know, who should know better to not to sensationalize. I think it's a sensational headline, which does not capture at all what we saw happened in Masvingo, except if you've got other eyes which are not similar to all of us. Secondly, that when you ask me and say there was a small crowd in Masvingo, and I failed to understand what they were trying to achieve. Again, I failed to grapple with what exactly you are trying to say, because you then have to explain to me what you understand by small and what you understand by big, because obviously, as we begin, it shows that probably we have got different meanings to particular words. That was a bumper crowd in Masvingo. In fact, it was too big to even start to ask about its size, and you have seen it. So probably I want to hear from you, what's your perspective of small, and what do you expect a Triple C to gather when they come for a rally? But definitely anyone with proper eyes, I think you need to see like me, you need to go and see an optometrist, and so that they can clear your eyesight, come back. These days, I seem to paralyze you. When I say some points, you get into a paralytic, mode. Where are you, Gamba?
Uyo, uko, kuno, aho, bano. Mama wanna get it nice. I know food I me so, I know food I tebe, I know kaya marigi. Kambakwe.com,
Kambakwe uyo anotara mari, anogaya mari. Garai mamunzwa, pane nyaya pano zvamunoda kunzwa zvinotaurwa pano madiko kumunzwa mugovane.com gambakwe vanogaya mari vanotaura mari vanosiya mari gambakwe vanotaura feya kuti pamberi zvichafamba sei vanhu muterere zvikubatsirei mukufamba kwenyu zvikubatsirei mirai ndikudzei kuti chokwadi pano chizere gambakwe vanogaya cash vanopa mafacts vanotaura straight vane evidence vane confidence plus intelligence
Right, Doc.
I
think
was
we have to
gone away. I was saying normally when I seem to attack you, you get into your internet seems to.
No, I'm sorry, Doc. You know what's happening? I've got load shedding coming within the next 20 minutes. So I don't know what happens when I've got load shedding. My network suddenly becomes very slow and it keeps breaking down. So we have to do this very quickly because my electricity is gone. And funny enough, it happens at 9 o'clock. So I have to change my time of broadcasting because this is becoming a nuisance. Right.
Okay.
Let me say what I wanted to say.
Yes.
My home is very close to that stadium. I have been there when Chamisa was announcing whatever, when they started the coalition, the MK Alliance. That stadium is very, very small. They tried their best to make like the numbers, but they don't have the numbers. In fact, they bussed so many people from all over the country. Some of the people, if you look at Fadzai Mahere, she tweeted that the people were arrested who were being bussed from all over the country. I think you saw that tweet that she put out yesterday. The CCC is showing its weaknesses. If you look at the CCC, they are going to the same place over and over again. So their favorite places, Gokwe, then Chitungwiza, then Masvingo, Bulawayo. Those are the places that they go to. They simply don't have people nationally who can fill a stadium, or maybe if they go to Mtare, they can have people there, but they still have to bus a lot of people around. This is why I'm saying I don't understand what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve with busing these people across the country. We've said this before. And you're aware that some people even, I think some people were very injured coming from these rallies which they organize and carry people all over the country.
Well, you have said quite a lot there, but let me address each of the things that you said one by one. Firstly, let's talk about busing, what you say, busing of supporters. First and foremost, this is the Triple C. You know very well that it is a party whose assets, whose money that was due, I mean, previously as MDC Alliance, whose money was due to them from the political party's finance was diverted and taken away. Where do they get the money? They are only depending on the support of their of the citizens, right? Secondly, if citizens organize themselves and in groups and get transport, and they do it without being forced, and without being robbed by thugs, by political thugs, there is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. These are citizens organizing themselves and finding ways to go and participate in their political activities. Right. Compare with ZANU-PF. Compare with ZANU-PF, where people are rounded up, businesses are closed or they are stopped because there is a rally that is going to happen. Hungry people are forced to go to rallies, and we know this, on very, sometimes very, very disgraceful promises that you get a pack of KFC there. And most of them, they go back hungry. Some of them get stranded. And above all, using taxpayers' money, because ZUPCO is used. And that's not right. So I think I've addressed the issue of busing. Citizens are organizing themselves in groups in whatever form, and they are doing it by themselves out of the love of their own movement which they are building up. That's the first thing I wanted to address from what you said. Secondly, you mentioned that it seems that they just go to one place. No, it's not. We know very well that they've been going for these thank you meetings, thank you rallies, and Masvingo was one of them. And you should know, probably, let me tell you that Masvingo, Eben in particular, where they were, is CCC stronghold with Honorable Jacob, is Jacob who, Nyoka Nete or something, as its only MP there, out of 26 Masvingo, constituencies. And remember, within that urban center, 4 councillors there recently defeated ZANU-PF and the MDC alliance on the 26th of March. And remember again, with this particular place where they were, in 2018, the majority of Masvingo urban voters voted for Advocate Nelson Chamisa than they voted for President Mnangagwa. And in Masvingo urban, Advocate Nelson Chamisa's councillors won 7. By the way, they won 7 council seats out of 10 in that urban area. And remember also, President Chamisa or Advocate Nelson Chamisa's by-election campaign rally that was held in Rujeko after they denied them from getting into Mucheke. They did it at Rujeko ground for about a few days before the 26th of March. It more than 40,000, which you guys tried to beat down to whatever numbers you were talking about. And 40,000 people were in attendance at that time during the campaign rally. It is therefore obviously befitting that the CCC goes back to say thank you to those people. And because you need to, to consolidate, that's what they are doing by thanking them there. So it needs no rocket scientist to know why they are returning there. But what is baffling CCC critics is that this so-called structureless and yet a newly formed party is winning both in the urban areas and in the rural areas. Chipinge is a case in point. I think I have tackled you on that, except if you have got a follow-up question, Gambakwe. And again, I should say, I want to add and say, under the Mugwazo concept, probably you have not heard, the CCC have got what they call the Mugwazo concept, where the CCC has deployed its champions in both rural areas and urban areas. And so you shouldn't think that they are only going to Masvingo and Mucheke in particular. No, they have a concept that they are running with right now. You guys might not be covering it, but it is there. So we are seeing a very fresh strategy in Zimbabwean politics unfolding right before us under the leadership of Advocate Nelson Chamisa.
Doctor, you know what? I
Yes.
don't want to spend time on Chamisa's organization skills. Chamisa is the administrator of a political party. I always tell people this in private. I've told people in 2018, the biggest problem with Chamisa is he cannot set up an organization. He cannot put in place systems. This is his biggest weakness. And until he changes that, he cannot win an election. That is my view. And let us quickly move on before we get disturbed again. Let's now look at his speech. Chamisa went on about electoral reforms. He went on about his plans, why people should vote him in 2023. Then he spoke about demonstrations which are coming if there are no reforms. He talked about the lack of party structures, what you're saying now. He talked about the chiefs taking people to the voting stations and that the elections will not be free and fair. And he talked about his regional tour in the region to drum up support for himself and for his party, CCC, so that they can get into office. He also talked about the election in Kenya and the situation in Zambia, the election day in Zambia, which is almost about a year. And I think next week, I'm going to devote some time to Zambia, obviously. What did you make of that speech? Is that the Chamisa that can be president, or is that the Chamisa who is a student leader?
Thank you very much once again. In a nutshell, brilliant, articulate speech, which was clear in informing the voter where the movement is going. Because remember, at this stage, Advocate Nelson Chamisa's role is to consistently inform and consult the citizens on what the movement is up to, and particularly the 7 critical reforms that he talked about. I was quite impressed, because it shows that he has the grasp, and the party has got the grasp of what needs to be done now. And in enunciating those 7 reforms, he was clearly telling the voter that as a movement, they were going to confront head-on, whether it be ZEC, ZANU-PF government, in order to make sure that these reforms are revisited. He talked about the right to vote. That in particular, under that, he mentioned that the diaspora people should vote, as happened in Kenya. It is possible. Why is the ZANU-PF government refusing to have that? They have no excuse. He talked about the 18-year-olds being allowed to get registration easily and to vote easily without being asked too many questions of presenting, proof of residence and all that. Make the young people, make it easy for the young people. I mean, here is a leader who understands that our nation is young, the continent is young, and these young people, they need to be allowed, and it is the role of the state to allow them and to make it easy for them to register to vote. He talked about prisoners being allowed to vote. And in Zimbabwe, it's more like a taboo, because prisoners are always treated as subhuman. But you must understand that they have rights as well, right? And he talked about, people being, some people voting for others, headmen, Vanasabuku, going to vote for others on flimsy excuses that they can't write or they can't do this and that. And he talked about that they are going to confront those issues to make sure that the right to vote is protected. He went on to talk about the issue of the voters' roll, that it has to be credible. And it shows that he is very much aware of what needs to be checked, that the voters' roll should not be ever changing. You do not have one proper voters' roll that is properly audited. And he talked about that they are going to push for its auditing. And I think that is very important, and the voter needs to hear that. Of course, what now we wait to see is, what are they going to take that action to make sure that those promises materialize, because those are the very issues that affect the election. He talked about the release of results, that they should be released at the polling station right there. Right there is where they should be transmitted from. Everyone should see them, right? And in so saying, he then answered you about the polling agents, in which he said, as a movement, they have done their homework about about polling agents, and our hope is that they find people of integrity who are going to be able to be true to the movement. And that is important, coming from Advocate Nelson Chamisa, because we wanted to hear that. We wanted him to talk to us, to talk to the voter about that. He talked about the printing of the ballot itself. Remember, this hasn't been an issue, a very hot issue, as to who will do it. And can all the contesting political parties know about it? Can the process be transparent? And we want to see them pushing on that, because that is an important dynamic of this election. He talked about the security of the vote itself, and I was actually impressed when he highlighted the fact that the United Nations has to be involved in this election, and it's important because there are telltale signs that it will be disputed again. If not, after all, our 1980 election was also overseen by the United Nations, and it can be done now because we are coming out of another disputed election, he talked about the media, access to media. He talked about fair coverage, and in which obviously he asked the audience to say, have you ever seen even the president of the CCC being shown on ZBC TV? By the way, ZBC TV, the state media, the radios, the newspapers, we all pay for them. It's for the taxpayers, and everyone must have access to them. And instead, what happens when Advocate Nelson Chamisa is shown on TV, is always in the negative. When they speak about him or write about him in the print media, it's always negative. And for him to call out the government and ZEC to look at that, I think it is an important aspect. What we wait to see is, are they going to push for that? Lastly, he talked about one very important aspect, that of political freedoms. He talked about I mean, it was so clear. You know, you can see a leader who knows what needs to be done. Arrest. He highlighted the issue of arrest of political opponents, the likes of Honorable Sikala, the likes of Honorable Sitole. They are languishing in prison. Being accused is not the same as being convicted. Why are they still languishing in prison? That has to be looked at. It's political persecution. And for him to highlight that, I think that was very, very important. And lastly, the banning of political rallies. Recently, right now, the rally, thank you rally in Chipinge has been banned. So what the state is doing is that they allow them one day in this place, they disallow in the other place, so that they can have propaganda to play with, to say, we allow, when they are allowed, they are happy, when they are disallowed, because you see, he highlighted. So for me, that was a clear articulation of what needs to be done before this coming election. And what I can only say is that Advocate Nelson Chamisa and his team should follow up on those things and make sure that they put pressure on the ruling elites, and also on the constitutions, on the commissions that are mandated, particularly the ZEC, that is the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, the Human Rights Commission, to make sure that the Media Commission, to make sure that all these things are impeccable, so that we can also have an impeccable election. So Advocate Nelson Chamisa is very clear, and I think he talked to us more about that. I could talk more about the way he talked about the international engagements, which again is needed. A diplomatic offensive is needed right now, so that you highlight to the region, particularly SADC, which is actually which should be responsible, which should be the midwife to a better Zimbabwe that do not have a crisis. Because if they let the situation go like this, particularly South Africa, it will blow up, it will explode on all of them, because obviously Zimbabweans will flock to those countries, and when that happens, it will be crisis in them. So for Advocate Nelson Chamisa to highlight that this issue has got an international dimension to it, and that he's doing something about it, it's actually, it shows a leader that knows what they are doing. So you ask me, is he presidential or he's a student leader? Here is presidential material that you need at this juncture.
Okay. Doc, I really feel sorry for anyone who has his hopes in Nelson Chamisa, because I know the capacity of that party. They lack capacity. They don't have it. And you can see it. All the things that they're talking about, these are the same things that they were talking about in the last elections. These are the same things that Morgan was talking about Tsvangirai before he died in the previous elections. They just don't understand where they stand right now, especially for Chamisa. Chamisa has a platform right now. Pollard was put in place, and Pollard is busy drafting the same law and reforms on elections and he's busy on stage. I think the biggest problem we have with Chamisa is he does not understand how laws are made. He's a lawyer, but he does not understand how politics and legislation come together. You cannot make legislation from a stage. All these things that he's talking about, they're being done in Poland as you speak. I'm sure there's a draft right now out which is talking about these reforms. Bodies like ZEC, you don't hand a document to ZEC and say implement these things. ZEC cannot implement anything. They follow a framework. So when I was looking at Chamisa, I thought he's more of a someone who wants to talk, but when it comes to implementation time, he always falls short because he does not want to go into the game. He's the kind of, you have seen those commentators who sit at the sides of the stadium talking about the match. That's what Chamisa is doing. And I feel like in 2018, in 2023, we'll be back here and we'll be saying, do you remember we talked about this? Look at the situation here right now. The opposition leader there, he's refusing to accept. Sorry, I'm hearing you talk.
Okay, I think when you say that you fail, you show a lack of understanding of how struggles are won. Firstly, your first pronouncement right here or claim is that they do not have the capacity. Let me tell you, in struggles, it is not those that think they are capacitated who always get the win. Even us here under the Rhodesian regime was more capacitated with better guns, better ammunition, better food, logistical, arrangements were better, and the liberation fighters won not because they had everything they wanted. They were getting parcels from China, from Russia, but in the end, it was those fighters with their will together with the citizens, because the citizens provided. And all our parents in the reserves and in all the areas, the will gave them the victory. That's number one. Number two, Gambakwe. In a struggle such as ours, you understand that you are fighting a serious dictatorship that has been in power, that uses all systems, that uses foul tactics, and for you to then blame a party like the Triple C, which is fighting, which is trying all its best. I don't see any logic there. I don't see any logic, because, for instance, if you accuse them of just speaking on the stage, do you understand what that does? There is what is called piling pressure, and when pressure comes to bear, and we know ZANU-PF, because of the state of the economy right now, because of the state of even factionalism within them, and because even the crisis in Zimbabwe now is affecting our neighbors. Go to South Africa. South Africa knows that whatever is happening in South Africa has got, Zimbabwe is partly, it's got a huge part to blame. And when South Africa, they are going for their elections, and I'm sure that there is coming a time where they'll say enough is enough. And already we can see that happening. Look at Zimbabweans now being refused their right to gain permits to stay in that country, and all this stuff. That is part of the political process starting to unfold, because South Africa realizes that they cannot, it is hot. For the current leaders in South Africa, they know that they will lose if they allow this to happen, and pressure will come to bear. And you might think that is just talk when Advocate Nelson Chamisa talks about
Ay, 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 uyo, uko, kuno, abo, pano, mama wanna get it, mama wanna get it.
Doc, who is lost, one of us is not available to speak right now. And I think it's the Doc, I think he has lost his network. So what I think we should do is, I think he said quite a lot about what he thinks about the rally in Masvingo. And I don't really want to say more. It would be fair for me to say anything else after he's obviously lost his network connection. So what we're going to do is we're going to end this discussion here today. And I'm very sorry, I apologize for the network issues. We are going to be having this load shedding here in Africa for a very, very long time. So I will have to change the time during which we broadcast. 9 o'clock is the time when I lose my power and it's not working. I could be having power here, but at the data center or on the actual fiber network. Good night to everybody. I'm so sorry about this. We'll be back again tomorrow. I want us to touch on the dispute in Kenya, the election dispute in Kenya. So I'll be back tomorrow. I'll try to find another guest who will talk about that dispute. Raila Odinga is saying he's going to contest the elections, the win of William Ruto in the Constitutional Court, and want to look at whether it makes sense or not, what he's saying about that. Let me see if Doctor is back. No, Doctor is not back. So let's see whether that makes sense or not. So tomorrow I'll be back here in the evening, same time, and we'll talk about that. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Good night.